And then
I should have mentioned, it's Katie, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
And I always say, you know, I'm gonna mention it, but that's because I forgot to record it. And we missed some of it. But I'm recording this, the small groups, we're gonna break into small groups where you're gonna talk. That's not gonna be recorded, but every time you're in the large group, that is recorded. So I'm saying that, so if anybody doesn't want to see themselves in this, just remove yourself from your video. But you don't have anything to worry about. It's all fine. It's time for us to take a stand. Let's do it. So, okay, Katie, go back.
Okay. Thank you. No, that was good. I also forgot to say that. So we are going to split into small groups. We're going to give you some questions, and we'll give you some time to talk, reflect on the questions and talk amongst yourselves and share reactions to them. So everyone, we should have at least 10 minutes in the small groups, and then we'll come back here and share out with the larger group what some of the takeaways were. So before we go into the small groups, I do want to make sure to say, make sure and leave space for everyone in the group to speak. We won't have a ton of time, so maybe 1 or 2 minutes per person to share your response to the questions that we have. And once we bring you back into the bigger group, as I said, we're going to ask you to share some takeaways. But in doing that, let's make sure and keep any takeaways anonymous, so we're not naming any names in front of the bigger group while this is being recorded as well. Are there any questions before we start or share the questions with everyone?
Katie, let me just add, you know, so I'm here to add, I'm adding. Think about what Rick said and see how that feels on your heart. Let your heart feel. What does it mean? We live in a country where we've already decided, and we see that being acted out, that we would do away with democracy. We would be willing to live in an autocracy with a madman, if need be, than to have equality. How does that feel? And what is it time to act on? So just add that to the things that you're pondering.
Yes. We have the conversation starters in the chat. Frank just threw them in there. So they are, what was your most recent experience with race? How did it affect you, and what did you do? And what would you do differently if it happened again? Or what would you do the same if it happened again? So those are the prompts that we're going to ask you to reflect on and share out in your small groups. And it is 1:16 right now. So we're going to have everyone jump back to the bigger group at 1:30. And I think that's it. Am I missing anything, Diane?
Well, okay, we're informal, so I can just ask Frank. Frank, now, because before we had a person that did these breakout groups, so now Frank knows how to do it, but we haven't done this before. So Frank, will they come back automatically, or do you have to pull them back?
Once I hit create, I believe it will take me to a timer. And then you set a time. If not, I can pull back at 1:30.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Okay.
Okay. So that's what, so now as I'm speaking, I'm using up your time. You only have about 10 minutes. So Katie,
so sorry, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I'm not seeing the prompts in the chat.
Oh, here. It's up a little bit already, so I can paste it again here.
Oh, okay, sorry. Oh, I see now. Okay, thank you.
Frank had posted it. Okay, let's go to small groups, and we will be back here at 1:30. And it will happen magically, hopefully. Frank, are you good to split us off?
Yeah. Okay, now we know.
Yep.
Now, if I click on the X, okay. Hi, Jordana, Pablo, Nancy, Paula, you're back. It's good to see everybody. Lily, good to see you, Lily. Hi.
Hi, Diane. Nice to be here with everyone.
It's good. Yes, Lily's doing great work. She
I'm
made me-
trying.
she lives in Greece, and she seems to be all over kind of Europe doing important work.
Not anymore. I'm only through Zoom, you know. I'm staying very protective of my lungs that are sensitive. But yes, trying, yeah.
Well,
on
see,
Zoom.
that's the beauty of Zoom. Now we can reach people
Right.
we could never reach before in a group.
That's right. Yes. So happy to be here and getting to know the people who are here. Yeah.
It's great.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Are we all back? Yes, I think so.
Seems to be.
Yeah,
I
so
Mina.
we're gonna jump into the debrief and hear from each group what was a big takeaway, something that we learned, maybe a theme that you want to share with the larger group. And it would be great to hear from each small group if there's someone who wants to volunteer to kick us off. You can come off mute, or
I'll do it. I'll do mine.
Jordana, thank
Well,
you.
and I'm not going to identify or tell any stories, but the themes were very, it's very intense in that it's the profiling and presumptions we make about people some of us make when we see people. And I was just telling them, I actually watched the movie Passing last night. And that movie also talks about that. And for me, what I was wondering about the movie Passing and presumptions about people that white people make in certain contexts, if they see people as Black or white, no matter what they really are or whatever they identify based on context. In other words, that can't be a white person because I'm in this context, or that can't be a Black person because I'm in this context. And I'm speaking about white people and their perceptions of who they see. So that was what came up. And obviously whoever in my group wants to address that, they can. But that was the theme.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who
I
else?
guess I'll jump on in. Unless somebody else is speaking, go ahead.
No, I think it was you.
Oh, all right, cool. We had a nice group. I won't say anybody's name, nothing of that. It seemed like we spoke on some things that people felt in their souls, like they were kind of trying to work out some kinks within themselves. One of the questions I think that came up was, being white, what is it in America? And for some people who may not have spent their whole life here and come here, they're trying to figure out what's what and how do things work here. If there's any language barriers, how does that affect interpersonal communications? You know, if you're trying to express something to someone and you don't fully understand the culture and maybe you don't have a full mastery of the language, how can you be sensitive and move forward? And last was pretty much about sensitivity, about differences in culture, differences in, you know, what expectations, and somewhat I would link it into what Jordana was talking about, perceptions of people and based upon what you see on the outside of that person. So today on Martin Luther King's birthday, he was talking about this whole perception of color. The color thing to me is deep. I'm not going to get too deep into it. I'm going to shut my lips, but I will say this, is that his whole thing about the content of character is something I was talking to my friend about this week. And the content of the character should be, I think, the focus for the country. so that we can't overlook this color thing because it's in our face, and I deal with it all the time. But the content of the character is really what we need to be moving towards. So I had a good meeting, and thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
There were few basic things that we focused on in our group, and what one was being the only one in a group of other people. The example was that was one black woman who was Dominican in a group of white people, and how she must feel. And I put it out that as Black people, we are used to being the only one, depending on where you are, where you work, the situation, and many most people of color are probably used to being in that situation. And I also pointed out in my career working with people of multiple cultures. Yeah, I forgot where I was going with that. What the other thing, what pointed out what was observed behavior in the Boston area, that there are a lot of separation, like different pockets of people, and being in Jackson, Mississippi, and having lived in Cambridge for 16 years, but it is still my favorite place to be, because you still have the freedom to walk around and be with people of different backgrounds and different colors, and not feel uncomfortable or feel you're going to be attacked. There might be something that I left out that somebody in the group might want to put in.
So thank you, Annie.
Annie.
Let's everybody take a deep breath. And remember to do that. We can't get ourselves tensed up, because then the universe can't flow through us. So let's just relax, take breaths a lot, and still say what is on our hearts. So thank you, Annie. What Annie said was, we don't want to quickly pass by that. She said that people feel like they might be attacked if they're in groups of people who don't appear to be their particular group. So keep that on our hearts. And also keep on our hearts what Rick Christman said earlier, that we're in a time when white supremacy is taking a stand. So to me, that's all the same thing. So let's breathe, relax, and talk about that.
Does anyone else have any stories that they want to share or examples of something that might have happened and how they reacted or wish they would have reacted to it?
I can go for our group. We just talked about kind of, well, not to say names, but our group was 4 people who identify as white, and we were talking about kind of uncomfortable kind of like acts of racism that we would see and what we would do in it and how the situation was handled. And it seemed that at least in the Boston area, or like basically we talked about how that there are going to be things that come up that will be very awkward, whether with friends or just in a public place, and what we can do to either help the situation or call people out, because it might not seem like a big deal at the moment or the time, but more just what can we do the next time, and what can we do to help the person or the act that's going on. And yeah, I think that's what we got from our group. So
Thank you for sharing that. Diana, I see your hand is up.
Yes, I'd like to share for our group. Hopefully our group is good with that. One of the the theme that felt like it came up, we were, if I'm not mistaken, I know I'm in the South and Central Florida, then we had a West Coast and Northeast. And our examples were were different just based on where we are, what we live, what we experience. And so my share was more around trauma responses to just like blatant words. You know, people put things on their cars that are, for me, very insensitive. And so just driving down the road, I can have a trauma response being behind a truck that has a message on it. And then others were talking about, you know, just in their career and work spaces of, you know, kind of one step forward, 2 steps back when it comes to having these deeper conversations about, you know, celebrating holidays or, you know, being inside of diversity conversations and those not feeling quite equal. So for me, it was very, it's so interesting how when that one question comes up, how we have such different takes based on our day-to-day lived experience, and how far we have to go and how important it is for all of us inside, like across the country, to support each other. Because while I'm working on my trauma response, it feels like I'm centuries, well, not centuries, but many years, like I'm not dealing with the same types of issues that you're dealing with up in Massachusetts, because, you know, folk are just thinking very differently up there. So that was what came across as interesting for me.
But so I have a question for Dizena, which is when you talk about Massachusetts being different from where you are. Is it? I mean, I guess Black people who live in the Boston area might feel it is really different from Central Florida, but I think there's trauma everywhere, deep trauma and centuries of it. So
I
don't know if
agree.
anyone.
I agree. And I haven't lived in Massachusetts in close to 20 years, so I get that. I think just based on what was the incidences that came up in our group, the memory that came up first for me was driving down the street, and for others was, you know, being inside of the dialogue and feeling like even inside of that dialogue that there were issues. So it just seems like different parts of the same craziness that we're all dealing with.
If I could, I wanted to add on to that. You know, I look at, I'm also from Massachusetts and I moved to the South. I live in Georgia now. And so I watched African Diaspora Channel pretty much weekly to get our perspective on how certain things are happening in the world. So in the United States, there are all these different atrocities going on from state to state with these white supremacists doing this and doing that, police officers doing this and doing that. In Massachusetts recently, there was a young lady who was a college student who was found missing, and they found her dead, raped, all types of stuff. This is just recently, and the police did not do a thorough investigation. There's also another case where they called it a standoff with these people who call themselves Moors, like I do. And they were standing up for particular liberties and freedoms that are granted underneath the Constitution, which is dealing with human beings, as opposed to the statutory laws, codes, and ordinances that deal with property that we are being dealt with because of our labeling and social status. So in overall, I won't even get into the Ahmaud Arbery case, all these cases going on, Jelani Day, who was found without his eyeballs and his body parts. These young kids are getting stolen from the hospitals. There's all kinds of things happening in America, and it's not just in the South, it's in the North, it's in the West. So pretty much it's a universal problem. You know what I mean? Whatever accent that draw comes out, if they call you nigger or naga or nigga, it's all the same thing unless you really know the meaning of that word. And that's a whole nother conversation.
Thank you, Sundiata. Thank you. I'm gonna, I always like to call on people. So we're reaching the end of the time we have. We started off listening to Rick Chrisman, and he talked about a sermon or something that he's preparing. So Rick, let me ask you a question. So you said that you see Christianity, it is, you didn't say these words, but is running amok, and you said we needed to act. Can you talk about now what you've heard here today? What is your feeling today, and how would you speak to your people in your church?
Well, you're asking a very hard question I haven't answered yet, but your wording is absolutely correct. I think there's a portion of Christianity that has run amok. Unfortunately, too, it is tapping into a very broad and deep strain of Christianity, which was very common prior to the 20th century, which assumed that the white race was superior and justified not only slavery but every other evil that was perpetrated on non-white races. How to go about this? I don't know. I have a daydream that I'd quit the church and I'd go and become an itinerant evangelist in the South at these fundamentalist churches, and I'd take a picket sign and I'd say, Jesus loves you, so why do you hate people so much? What's your problem? Do you really know Jesus, or are you still just copying and imitating the fears of other people. But that's a daydream. Diane, I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer than that. I sure don't want to perpetuate or perpetrate religious wars, but I have to say that I already said that Christian nationalism is a contradiction in terms.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And I don't want to, I know it's time, but I want to say that I know it's not, yes, Christianity has taken the lead, always have been the slavers and everything, but white people belong to other religions besides just Christianity. And white people as a whole, this is a whole thing, not just Christians. So I just want to remind ourselves of that. There's something we all have to focus on. So Katie, go ahead.
Thank you. Also, Michelle's got her hand up too. I want to make sure we get her before we wrap.
Thanks, Katie. I just wanted real quick from our room to just represent from our room. And, I think thematically, a lot of what we talked about was awareness, self-awareness, lack of awareness by others, and having perspective one way or another. And I think in certain situations, we weren't sure what we would do differently or what we could affect. I think it was about leading with kindness, leading with information and knowledge, and doubling down to hopefully ensure that the same mistakes wouldn't be made again. And if by educating and sharing knowledge, or even just expressing and reflecting back on our roots, that impacted someone along the way, an additional person, that was a space to be in. So
thank you for sharing that. Okay, so we are getting close to the end already. That went by quickly. There were many of you here who mentioned that this was actually your first racial justice collaborative event, and we wanted to actually, Diane, do you want to share quickly just a little bit more about the Racial Justice Collaborative for those folks who might be interested in attending more events or even joining on as members?
Thank you, Katie. Yes, let's talk about joining as members. That would be great. We extend the beauty of Zoom. We are a Zoom organization. So the beauty of Zoom is that you don't have to be in one place, but you can be wherever you are. But if there's anybody out there within the hearing of my voice who feels that they want to participate, and especially if you have skills that you want to bring, and you have time. So we're capacity, how much capacity do you have to share? If you do have any kind of sharing, or you want to participate, you want to be part of a bigger effort, and you have ideas, or and you have a willingness to work together with other people, Katie is going to put her name in her email address, and so contact Katie, and then we can connect with you. So what we're doing, we do events, and we're always open to other ideas. We've got events coming up. Frank's going to talk about that, and our events have tended to be educational. We're starting to move into what is broadly known throughout the process work community as sitting in the fire. So on this issue of race, it's nothing to tap, whatever, to dance around. We have to learn how to just talk about it and take the chance, open your mouth, say something. If somebody tells you they don't like it, well, then learn that. That's all you learn, is that this one person didn't like what you said. Now, if you keep hearing it, and you shake that up and say, okay, what does that mean? And then you look at yourself and say, okay, now that I've heard all these things, how do I want to be in the world? Do I want to, I'll sum it up by saying this. In 1964, my favorite year, in the 1964 Civil Rights Act, we decided as a country that we couldn't change hearts and minds, so we would change behavior. From that, laws were changed, and some changes did occur. But where are we today, all these years later? Hearts and minds. We can't change your hearts and minds. That's up to you. But you can change your hearts and minds. You have to decide, and then you have to commit, and then you have to notice. That's all you have to do. You don't have to get out and do a whole bunch of parading around. You can just decide to pay attention, look at yourself, decide you want something you don't want to be, and then notice when you're being that you don't want to be, and it will start to become less and less and less, but you have to commit. So that's one way. So we want you to work with us. And that's enough for me to say. I want to see all of you working with us. Nancy, Bernhard, yes. And Lily, thank you for coming, Lily. And Julia.
Thank you.
Yes. And Lily, can you say?
I loved how you said what you just said, Diane. I love what you just said. In the end, that was beautiful. Very clear, very succinct, and beautiful how you summed it up. All you have to do is decide and pay attention and notice when you're being what you don't want to be. Beautiful. Yeah.
And you know, I say that from my experience. I know it works because I've done it. It might come as a surprise, but there are things about myself that I have not appreciated. I've learned that they're not the good ways to be for myself. So I decided to change. And how did I do that? I decided I had to notice. I noticed every time I did it. And then the noticing of it brought it back more and more and more. And now I feel it coming as a thought impression, a sensation over my left ear. And so when it comes, I can let it go. And I change. And you can do the same thing. You have to commit.
Well, Diane, maybe I can get you to go on the road with me, and we'll evangelize those white supremacists. Listen, I gotta go. God bless you all.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Before people jump off we have quite a few racial justice members here on this call too. If you all wouldn't mind raising your hand just to like say hi, you know who you are, people who work with us already. We would definitely love for you to join us. I threw my email and the website into the chat. And we have some upcoming events too. Frank, did you want to quickly touch on those for us before we wrap?
Yeah. Just wanted to thank everybody for coming. And we have 2 more of this informal series that we're doing. So it'll be Saturday, February 12th and Saturday, February 26th. They'll both be at 1 p.m. I just put it in the chat. So if you haven't signed up for it, you can certainly do that by clicking on the links. And it's going to continue this series of more just dialogue and people getting an ability to talk to one another. And for the first of the major race retreats, it's not on Eventbrite yet, but it'll go up live very soon. And it's going to be March 5th. So be on the lookout for that one as well. And everything we do is on Eventbrite. So if you go out and you add us to your following, then every time we do something, we post, you get an email saying there's a new event. So that's a good way to stay in touch with us. Like I said, there's the website, the emails, the Eventbrite. So please get involved. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you all. Thanks, Frank. So we are going to have more of these conversations. We would love for you to join us. And each one is going to have different facilitators, different people attending, and different questions. So it's going to be different every time. Next time we have Mina and Sundiata actually hosting the February 12th, and they're both here today. So we hope that you join us, and we hope to see you all again soon. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
can people stick around to chat or no?
For after party, Lane, you want the after party?
Sure. I'm here.
Just a little bit.
I'm
Yeah,
here.
we can
Bye,
stick around for
everyone.
those
Thank
who
you.
want to hang around.
Yeah, stay here if you want.
I'm kind of curious, Nancy Alder, you said you're in the Marin Hills?
Yes, yeah, sorry for turning my video off. I'm having back pain and needed to lie down. Yeah, I'm in Marin Lane.
I'm in Woodacre.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm
So
moving to Terra Linda next week.
okay, great. Well, I put my email in the chat in a direct message to you, so maybe we can
Oh,
connect.
oh, great. Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for the heads up
Okay.
on that.
All right. How'd you get here? How'd you hear about it?
Oh, you posted about the last event that I came to. You
Oh,
posted it
right.
on the San Geronimo Valley
Oh,
listserv.
great.
And so then, of course, I had to follow on Eventbrite, and I'm like, oh, they're doing a whole series.
Oh, great. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
How did we feel about that? Party people?
I thought it went really well.
Yeah.
It goes really fast,
Good.
of course. I mean, you have all these ideas and then you look and it's half the time gone, and then you look again and it's like, oh, we got 2 minutes, wrap it up.
It goes
So,
by so quickly.
but it's so much better than having nothing planned and you've got 55 minutes and you run out of things to say. It's like, oh, Lord, it's torture.
When
So
have you guys ever run out of things to say?
probably never.
Oh my gosh, it's
Thought it was
true.
really, really good. I was just talking with my husband here, and he even said the same thing. He was like, "Wow, wow, started." And you know, everybody's at different levels. So for the people who talk about it all the time, you can come in and kind of say something and leave. But when you're just getting folk, you know, the wheels are just starting to turn, and you're starting to get warmed up, and then it's done. So, but I think it went really well. You have a really great, like, consistently being able to get in 25, 27 people for your events is very impressive. So just when it gets bigger, like what if 50 people showed up? We had an hour, but that's a good problem to have. Good job.
Would be big.
Nice job, Katie.
Thanks.
Yes.
That was awesome.
Thanks, Lane. It went by so fast. I just don't understand time.